This is an ad that played on national television in 1972.
The McGovern Defense Plan. He would cut the Marines by 1/3. The Air Force by 1/3. He'd cut Navy personnel by 1/4. He would cut interceptor planes by 1/2. The Navy fleet by 1/2. And carriers from 16 to 6. Senator Hubert Humphrey had this to say about the McGovern proposal. It isn't just cutting into the fat. It isn't just cutting into manpower. It's cutting into the very security of this country. President Nixon doesn't believe we should play games with our national security. He believes in a strong America, to negotiate for peace from strength.
So a few things. One, this makes me want to vote for McGovern because like this looks good. It makes sense to me that was who my parents were, like they were with that. That makes sense to me. But like still looks good. This looks good to me. So what are you saying, that they haven't evolved at all because these are the same people that are Kamala people? Well, these are the people that evolved into the Clinton people, which is the Kamala people. Democrats for Nixon, that's definitely what the neo-lib people.
Nixon was never anywhere near as popular as Reagan was, even though the size of the margin of victory was almost identical between 72 and 84 in their re-election years. The difference, of course, is that the Democratic Party of 1984 and 1972 are two completely different political parties. In 1972, Democrats for Nixon was a real thing, but that was because the Uniparty was acting in concert to ensure that McGovern didn't have a shot in hell.
But 84 was just that. I don't know who was it. Mondale. Yeah, but although that was the Geraldine Ferraro.
Yes.
That was actually kind of cool.
Well, I will say that I will not allow my opponent to make fun of my age, and I will not make fun of his lack of experience. And at that moment,
and I'm not like a Mondale person by any stretch, but he at least comes from the correct part of the country. They have things better there.
Arguably worse, Phil? No. Seismically worse.
Hugely, bigly worse.
Huge.
But it's only gotten exponentially worse since then, each party. Like everything has led us to where we are now. Each administration has had their contribution to the downward spiral. They all do. Some more in certain areas than others, but this has nothing to do with the political theater. This is all just capital. This is all just capital and empire. So it doesn't matter who's there. No, we're heading in the trajectory is implosion of empire.
Yeah, and at the time, I'm not sure anybody necessarily thought that McGovern had a chance in winning, and of course, Nixon was a fairly popular president, to say the least. But then it just got pushed into overdrive when you basically had the Democratic Party machine behind the scenes working on behalf of Nixon. So how could you be competitive? It's not possible.
And ironically, though, nowadays when I hear that, it's like anybody that was a Republican back then is already to the left of where the Democrats are now.
Now the argument
it's crazy that was so conservative, that Nixon was conservative. Reagan wasn't anywhere near, we have all lost our minds.
Well, and let's be fair, we're also living in a different time now, because the argument, of course, would have been that if Bernie had won the nomination in 2016, that the Democratic establishment would have done the same to him. Yes, they did. They did it in the primary. They did the same thing. The difference is that we're living in a technological age where we can actually see this happening in real time. In 1972, you didn't have that luxury. You didn't know the types of things that were going on behind the scenes when you actually had an insurgent, non-corporate candidate at the top of the ticket trying to bring real systemic change to the country. That could happen today, and that is the advantage of having technology. 50 years later, it does make a difference.
It could happen, but it can't until we destroy the capital empire.
How are we going to do that?
It's happening. It's crumbling on its own. We will have the U.S. empire will have come and gone in like a quarter of the amount of time that the Roman Empire even existed. Like that's how much of a blip we're going to be in history. And we're just watching it towards sort of like the tail end of it. But yeah, I mean, you don't see enough in this country about BRICS and what's going on around the world. And people in this country are very untraveled and unseasoned. And for the most part, don't really leave this country. Most people don't even have passports. So, we are very, very in a bubble here. But when you look at what's going on around the world and you look at things like BRICS, which, by the way, has a higher GDP than the G7, you start to think, wait a minute, they're really going to get us. It's only a matter of time, because at the end of the day, might doesn't make right permanently. It does it for a while, but it's all the economy, stupid. And when they figure out a way to screw us economically, and that's a matter of time. You know what I mean? These are not like I know we like to pretend that those people are not as sophisticated as us, not as smart as us, whatever. I disagree. And so as soon as they find a way to cripple us, like economically, it's over.